Oh, one device to record the speaker or to have the Zoom.
Yeah, I was gonna do that.
Oh, okay, sure, sure. So I'm a record presentation. Wait, like to have their voice or to like show?
Show them
Do you think it'll pick up their voice?
the sound box. Where are settings like host tools? Um, Philip, do you know where the settings are on here?
For what?
Just settings, Zoom settings for host tools.
Oh, maybe to my place.
Mm,
Uh,
let me try stopping sharing and see. Yeah, host tools. I don't know why it disappears. Cool.
I joined the Zoom call.
Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Microphone and stuff. Hello, can you hear us? I can hear you. Okay, cool.
nice.
Okay. Um, yeah, we can give it a few minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
So might as well wait for it. There it out, like out.
We do have a few online on Zoom. Yeah, we want in person.
That's big. Wow. And then they all have the cameras on. Maybe we try.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool. More bot. Love to see it. Hello.
Hey. Oh, we'll see.
Going.
Take a seat there.
What's your name? Hugo.
You
I'm Druzy. Nice to meet you. Druzy.
go.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Biked here.
Yeah, this is a biker.
How long is what's it called?
Maybe until like 4:30-ish.
For
So we
you're already in it? Cool.
start half an hour before. I feel like we did the long thing that happened last time. Just typed it out beforehand, so this one should be quicker.
Okay, let me figure out this I think I'll try to do this over. Uh, Judith from Haiti Action Committee, and then one other person will hopefully be played, right? Or yeah. Okay, cool. Yep. Cool, cool. Okay. Is it literally balanced? Okay. No about that.
Oh wow.
Does that show up in the recording? How does recording on Zoom work? Does it show everybody's?
I think it just shows the screen.
Is there a way to have it show both? Or just each?
That sort of. Like we can do a.
Yes. Yeah. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Mm.
So maybe we could start by introducing ourselves, you know. So my name is Judith Murkinson. Everyone calls me Murk. I'm a member of Haiti Action. So I'm a member of the National Lawyers Guild. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a legal international. Um, and yeah, I've been doing Haiti work and Haiti Action Committee is more than 30 years old. And it started in 1991 after the first coup against then President Harris. And it's been doing work ever since. I've gone to Haiti twice. Once after the earthquake in 2010 with a women's march. And then I went 6 years ago on a human rights delegation where we wrote a human rights report on which I'll talk about later, the Last Sunday massacre. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get back since then because of security situation. Yeah, so enough. So go ahead.
Yeah, I go by Andy, everybody. don't know, we organized with Freedom Road Socialist Organization and San Jose Against War, one of the founding members of San Jose Against War. I guess I've been an organizer for like 5 years, like since the George Floyd uprisings. Yeah, anti-war work is like my main area of work. My mom is Taiwanese, and the drive for war against China is something that threatens that entire side of my family. So, um, definitely just gotta prepare to win. Um, yeah.
Cool. Hey everyone, my name's Philip. He, him pronouns. I organize with San Jose Against War, as well as Freedom Road. And yeah, it's been about a year since I started doing like organizing work, and it's been awesome. Looking forward to continuing. So yeah.
I'm Druzy, she, her pronouns. I'm also with San Jose Against War and also super excited to learn about Haiti and the situation that's still happening there and the fight for reparations. So
Hi, I'm Hugo. Tim brought me in today as my introduction to this, so I'm excited to see you guys have going on.
Sam, I started protesting after Mahmoud Kamil's kidnapping, and yeah, I'm here.
Okay, do you know a little bit about the situation in Haiti or no?
the present situation, not very much. I mean, like the colonial history.
Do you want to do online introductions or
Do people online want to introduce themselves too?
Jaffa
Who?
or Fu, would you like to introduce yourself really quickly?
Hello, I'm Sue. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm at work right now and there's cameras around me, so I would better not talk about um, what you guys
Okay, yeah, no
asked. So
problem.
yeah, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Fu. Jaffa chatted. Can't talk right now, but I'm happy to learn more. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jaffa. Okay. All right. Go for it.
And the reason that I thought it was important to have just that often, see people are, as you can see, maybe it's right here. And it's right next to Cuba. And it's pretty close to the US. And it's also right next to the Dominican and Puerto Rico. So it's right in the pickup place there. Next slide.
oh, there's not.
Oh, sorry. I got it. Oh,
Yeah, the slides.
I got him. I got him.
Yeah.
Oh, you got him. Okay, you got it.
And this is a I.
Yeah.
Okay, we just started.
Sure.
Uh, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Pierre Labossière, Haiti Action Committee.
Yeah, so you want to take over?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Here you see the big island. Two-thirds of the island is Dominican Republic, and one-third is the United States. So.
Yes. Thank you, Murph. Did you talk about Columbus yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
This is just geography.
Just geography. Okay. So thank you so much. Sorry for being late. You know, my son had somewhere to go and got the car and pushing like a madman. But I made it. So okay. I mentioned Christopher Columbus, 1492. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Haiti. That's when that was the invasion. You know, the land was populated by the Arawak and the Taino people. And when he landed there in 1492, then he did started the conquest, and there was a lot of resistance by the original inhabitants. And so a war of extermination took place. First, they were enslaved with the gold, because there is a lot of gold in there. So they were enslaved to take the gold, but they resisted very strong. And by 1503 was when the first enslaved Africans were there to the island. And so you'll see that they call it Hispaniola, but the original name of the entire island is that three names: Haiti, or how we pronounce it, Haiti, Quisqueya, or Bolo. Those were the original names. And so the Africans, within 10 years, they joined with the indigenous people and they started to join against the Spanish. So I mentioned that to say that there was always a issue of collaboration. And that's why 300 years later, when Haiti became independent, they took the name Haiti in honor of the indigenous. And the name also happens to be in one of the African languages, do not obey. President Aristide discovered that when he was doing his research in African languages. And so that was a name that also appealed to the Africans, do not obey. So there were many resistance, as you can imagine, slavery was very strong. And it was strong resistance. Oh, sorry. Yes, that's it. So thank you, those are good. So there was a lot of resistance to slavery from the very beginning, since 1510 and going on. We call it acts of resistance. And by 1791, they decided that the best way, rather than each plantation rising by themselves, they were crushed. Let's all do one rising, all of us together. And this happens to be the 234th anniversary. It happened actually on August 14th was a congress of all of the enslaved, the leaders of the enslaved Africans. They had organized themselves, they had their leaders who came out of this movement. And then they had a ceremony, that's what you're seeing here. And during that it was a political religious ceremony. It was a political religious ceremony. And during that ceremony, and it's a Vodou ceremony. Vodou means spirit in the phone language of the African people. So they called on the spirit of the African gods. They called on the spirits of the ancestors to help them to guide their hands. And actually, I was speaking with a pastor in Oakland, and he said that was one of the first recorded acts of liberation theology. Because he was asking me, he was quizzing me about liberation theology, and I mentioned to 1968 in Colombia, Puebla, and he said, no, it goes further than that. So he referred to that. And it surprised me because he was a Christian minister. But he said, oh no, the voodoo, that particular place. So they vow two things. One, they call on each other, on their humanity, and that's the role of voodoo in Haiti. That's African spirituality, which reminded our people that they were human beings, that slavery was a condition imposed upon them. That's why it's very significant to see, because it was like the official formation of the Haitian nation. And they were, as they refer to them as tribes, but they were from different areas of Africa, speaking different languages. But then the uniting language was Creole, which was formed in the colony. And so many of them got it. That's why it's very significant. This happened on August 14th. And a week later, the night of August 21st and 22nd, they all rose up, all the plantations rose up at once. The goal was two things: to break the chains of slavery, and two, to kick out all the colonizers because of too many atrocities. And so,
like I noticed on your flyer, it's a Black Caucus, so it's really significant. It's also happened on August 21st. So that's why there's a tie directly from Haiti, when people are Haiti to Black Caucus.
that's right. And this started with 13-year war, 1 to 13-year war, with periods of peace at different times, but and I don't want to go into the connections with the French Revolution, because there were some French revolutionaries who supported that movement. But during that time also, without going into too many details about it, but it's important. Napoleon Bonaparte, the revolutionary French government had taken over and had recognized that this is a state of facts, that the enslaved Africans had declared themselves free. So it was recognizing that fact that they agreed to abolish the abolition of slavery in 1794. And it was some of them were very principled about it, but some others were like they had recognized the status quo, that now the Africans were armed and said, look, we are free and independent. But the French wanted to retain the colony. So Toussaint Louverture, one of the leaders who urged for, became the governor general of the island after kicking out the British and the Spanish, who during that time were trying to take over the island. And so he kicked them out, and the French made him governor general. When Napoleon came to power, Napoleon brought back all the old regime, the old slavery system with the old regime, the nobility and all of that. And so he sent troops to restore slavery. And so there was the struggle took off again. And in 1804, Haiti defeated them. It was Napoleon's first big defeat. Haiti defeated them and declared itself an independent nation. About 20 years later, the French, there was, and I'll close with this thought. Many times when you talk about the history of Haiti, it starts with the revolution. And then it comes to 1915, the US Korean occupation, and then it jumps in the Papador. So there is no sense of continuity. What happened between 1804 and 1915 was that the big question at that time is, where do we go from here now that we're independent? So the society was divided. The majority of the formerly enslaved Africans, they wanted the land, the big plantations, to be nationalized, to be under the government, which happened, but they also wanted them to be distributed to the people, so that people could own their own piece of land and work them communally. So that was one vision by the masses of the people. A small elite that emerged as a ruling elite, because they had been previously freed under the French. Some of them had French parents, and they declared that the plantations should belong to them because they are the inheritors of their father's property. So the people said, forget that. We toiled on that thing. So there was this fight that started right after independence what what would be the future direction of the land. And so this class, this little tiny ruling elite, which is the continuing struggle in Haiti today, was supported by the US, by France, by all the others, and that vision. But the masses of our people organized and formed peasant armies that fought against it. So during the 19th century, the 1800s, we had this back and forth at different times. You know, sometimes the people would win, and some of the plantations would be cut off for them. They want some of that, particularly in the south. And in the and at times, you know, you had more reactionary regimes that came in. But one of these reactionary regimes was in 1825 when the French imposed on Haiti ransom. The New York Times has a series of 4 articles called the ransom. It talks about that. What was that? It was something where the Haitian people, the masses, Haiti, had to pay back reparations to the former plantation owners, the French plantation owners. And so Haiti had to pay back this money, had to pay this money to the French. And so it was at first 150 million gold francs, but later it was reduced to 90 million gold francs. When President Aristide in 2003 calculated that money, it was about $21.7 billion. Just that straight money, the money that Haiti was costing. But the interest on that money, Haiti didn't finish paying this money to the French, and later on the debt was taken over by the US, not until 1952. So 2003, President Aristide demanded that this money be returned to Haiti. Because you see, Haiti as a newly independent nation. Now you're forced to pay everything you collect in taxes from the people to the French who had exploited the land before. And so instead of investing in schools, in hospitals, in irrigation canals, in things to promote, to develop the country, here you are taking all of the money and sending it to France. And a number of economists recently have been doing a lot of work on this, and they have realized that it's no longer $21.7 billion. One economist, a Frenchman, updated it to $28 billion as of 2022. But now a number of economists have seen that it's more than $115 billion because that money had been invested in Haiti. That's what it would have, that's what the true value would be today. And so the Eiffel Tower, whenever you look at the Eiffel Tower, it was Haitian money that was directly taken by the French and invested to build the Eiffel. So some of the economists are saying we have to take into account the Eiffel Tower being a money maker for France, because every year you have tons and tons of tourists visiting, and they are giving money and taking receipt none. See? So that's the kind of discussion. But in any case, I'm going to close right now and then I'll respond to questions. So that was what was happening in the 19th century. And by 1915, there was another uprising by the population. And they were close to taking power, and that's when the US came in.
Next slide.
And the US Marines invaded, and they stayed from 1915 until 1934 in Haiti, and setting the stage for a new chapter. So the debt that was owed to the French, and I said that in quotation, that debt, the US took it over. So now we were paying the US, and the Marines that started that, and today we are living the legacy of this occupation. Haiti is under occupation right now. Following the US Marine, after they left the Haitian military that they created, which was assuring that everything, the status quo, will remain as it is. And they created a series of dictators to carry out the wishes of the US, which is what is presently Haiti. Right?
Well, just to go back a little bit to understand. So when people always like, what's the thing that people always say about me? to describe it. It's the poorest country in the West, right? And it is poor, but it's like many, many countries, it's been made poor. It was made poor. And at the time when they overthrew the French, it was France's richest colony. In itself, it generated more wealth than all the other colonies. And it's estimated that like 20% of the French economy came from Haiti and continued to come. So here you have this country, it has gold, it has bauxite, it's all these different minerals, and it's the poorest country because all of it has been extracted through colonialism to be taken. And the role of the U.S., very beginning to be very clear, is the U.S. hated this revolution, you can imagine, because even though we think of, the 18th and 19th centuries as everybody isolated from each other, actually there was great thoroughfare of information, especially up the East Coast of the United States. And in slave communities and free slaves. And so people knew and were inspired by what happened in Haiti. And this, of course, sent chills through the Americas, through the governments of America. Thomas Jefferson hated what happened in Haiti and completely supported the French. We just learned that George Washington sent money, actually, to the French elite to stop the revolution there. And, in some ways, it's so ironic because the Haitian Revolution built part of the U.S. because it actually allowed for the Louisiana Purchase because the French were Russian to a certain degree. So when we look at the history of U.S. and European colonialism, it's really from then until now. And the same forces. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me say something about the Louisiana. When you think about Louisiana Purchase, it's not just the state, it's the Louisiana territory, which is many states today. And it doubled the size of the West at the time. So many people don't realize just the state.
Yeah. We're always taught, oh, it was so great. Like, it was so great. And then the French, Thomas Jefferson, the great Democrat, he was able to buy, the whole concept of buying it in and of itself. But of course, everything that we do. Whatever. And now So next one.
Excellent.
Just
The leader. Yeah, this is the infamous secret.
So I didn't quite catch it. So Louisiana purchased Louisiana because the French were bankrupt because Haiti had a revolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the Haitian Revolution, where I forgot how many troops perished. But also at the time that this was happening, Napoleon was involved in some wars also in Europe. So he was a busy little fellow. So he started with Haiti and he sent a man right to restore slavery. And as he started that, he got bogged down, but he was messing with other people on the European continent. And so he was really just overwhelmed. And so he had to sell it, get some money in order to continue.
Yeah, and this debt was imposed because they came with 11 warships that surrounded the harbor. And they said, if you don't give us this money, we will invade. And so
invade and restore the population in slavery and enslave them. And then restore them with them, all those big powers. Little Haiti at the time was just the US Haiti was just by itself, basically.
And what year was that?
That was in 1825.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Citadel, yeah. Yeah, it was built right after independence, because after independence, people knew that the French would try to come back. So Dessalines ordered Dessalines was by that time, 200 people was kidnapped and killed by the French in Fort de Joux. And some people who they exceptionally by the not want to die. Well, when you start someone tortured, you end up dying, children. I mean, before their untimely death. It's kidding. It's murder. So that's what they did. Was they it was one of the coldest places of there. We are talking about France, right? Where the soldiers are killed. They put in the cold cell. They started withdrawing the food from him, and then not giving him any firewood to keep warm. So they found him frozen and starved in his cell. So, but Dessalines had taken over after the kidnapping of Toussaint and his disappearance in France. So Dessalines, by this time, Haiti became independent, defeated the French troops in November 1803. And Dessalines right away said, hey, not less on our lords, another part. Let's prepare. So he ordered the building of a number of forts throughout the land. And that big fortress that you mentioned, which is in Cape Haitian to the north, whenever you go to Haiti, you got to go see it. You've been there. It's very impressive.
Right, like 35-degree people right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the people carrying the huge rocks themselves, And here I was just going up there and I had to stop it. And I'm thinking about, my God, our foremothers and forefathers, driving those rocks, going up there to build it. So it's such towards their determination to be free. So that's, and it had the formerly enslaved Africans. They were very skilled. So the lie is that these Africans were running in the jungle, they had no skill or anything. That's not true. These were people, who were artisans, they were carpenters, they were scientists, you name it, engineers. And so they built this fortress. And in that fortress, there was a foundry where Haitians were building cannons, their own cannons, making their own guns. Yeah, you saw the right. And they made replicas of them and they were there. And you can go there and see all the cannonballs and everything that were made in that foundry. They also had garden to produce food and also had a water system. The fort was built to withstand the siege for at least 3-4 months and had enough room for guns of the 2,000 or so. So, and to look at that fortress built over 200 years ago, and to look at Haiti today, I had to sit down and blew my mind. And I said, man, we got a lot of catching up. But that's the determination of people when it's a people's army or people determined to win their freedom and with a vision of building a society of justice.
Were there other colonies that had that imposed on them to have to pay back colonial powers?
From what? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, you're right. No. There were other forms that were used. Like I know when the abolition of slavery came in the islands of Jamaica, Trinidad, and some of them, I think in the 1840s, what they did was they made the people work extra as sharecroppers or whatever in order to pay back for I get to the term slave owners, but you cannot own a human being, you have kidnapped them, you have enslaved them. But then they were getting money from that, the governments were paying them back. We see it today. I mean, our tax money, many times it's taken and given to corporations, right? So they call it a different thing, but that's what happens.
And one thing people should know,
Yeah, Jimmy.
but, when Haiti declared its independence, said to everybody, it said that anyone who was enslaved was welcome to come to Haiti and be free, be part of this new society. And I think that that spirit is really important, which is another reason why we should, because it was an example, you know, that issue of being an example and not allowing that example to exist has its implications from then until now.
Yeah, that was another thing I was gonna ask. Since Haiti, you know, got rid of slavery and gained independence so early, like what was their relationship with other anti-slavery and anti-colonial movements or countries?
A lot, a lot. You have mentioned, if you look at the event of Nat Turner, the of course, in Northeast, Haiti was like the connection,
A beacon.
the beacon. And I've heard that also there was a big there was a big slave uprising in New Orleans led by Charles Delon. Some people claim that he was born um, at the time, and then because there was a lot of communication, because the Louisiana territory was a French colony, so people used to bring enslaved Africans from there trade, sell people and what have you. And there was a lot of commerce, so there was a lot of communication. So so there was that, and one of the biggest slave uprisings in New Orleans was led by this guy, Charles Delon, after Haiti was independent, and that was in 1810. But they were very familiar with the success. And so the great John Brown, when he led the attack on Harper's Ferry, he actually had the folks with him, his colleagues, they were studying the Haitian Revolution and studying the tactics and all of that. This is according to the one maybe Du Bois who spoke about it, about John Brown. So Merck mentioned about Haiti declared itself a haven for enslaved Africans from anywhere who would make their way to Haiti. And many did from the different islands and from the US as well. And also, and people of indigenous origin, because Haiti had felt strong kinship with indigenous people. But there is one last thing. That's why the Haitian Revolution was such a threat too. Napoleon had taken troops, people from Poland and Germany, put them in his army and sent them to Saint Domingue. He made them a promise that you guys want to free your own country. So if you fight for me, I will support you. So and he sent them to Saint Domingue, not knowing what the true mission was. So when they got there, they realized, because at that time in Europe, there was that spirit of revolution. So people were opposed to a lot of things, at the grassroots level. So when the Polish troops particularly saw that they were on the wrong side of it, many defected from Napoleon's army, joined the Africans under the leadership of the Africans, and they fought against the French. So that when Haiti became independent, they were all Haitian citizens, and their descendants are alive today, and they are intermarried with the African population. They are Polish names. When the Pope came from Poland, he met with a lot of them, and they have a lot of Polish customs and whatnot. And you'll see them, and they are in Haiti, a place called Kazan, particularly different parts where they were, and Dessalines offered them. He said, look, you can go back to your land, if you want to, we'll get a ship to take you. If you want to stay, hey, you got land, and many of them chose to stay. And their descendants are there today. So they didn't want that example to be no legal. And Dessalines would pay captains of slave ships to bring the enslaved, the kidnapped Africans on board their ships, and he would pay them to maybe that's how maybe made their way to Haiti as well.
Yeah, and the other thing is, Bolivar was inspired
Yes.
also by the Haitian Revolution. So you can look at, and I think it in general, the African community in Africa and throughout the Americas looks to Haiti and the example of Haiti as an inspiration. And so we can talk about that.
The pumpkin soup. You don't talk about the pumpkin soup. The pumpkin soup.
Oh, pumpkin soup.
Talking about like defiance. That's what
Yeah, there's a myth out there, tomato myth, that they're selling other people to drink pumpkin soup. Nah, that's a nice romanticized.
having pumpkin.
Oh, that's not true.
It's not true.
That's not the true story. Pumpkin soup is made from Africa. It's made in the different islands of the Caribbean, among the Africans, We have it's called Géomon, soup Géomon, as we call it, right? So I heard the UN said, well, they recognize it as being Haitian. And I have a friend from Barbados, she and I were happy. She said, yeah, congratulations. I said, you stop. I mean, the UN is playing games with us, after they participated in the destruction of Haiti and the mess we have today. Now they are claiming that they're recognizing transforming some. It's delicious. It's part of Haiti's tradition, like we take soup joumon usually the first of the year, but they make it throughout the year. But usually first January 1st, which is Haitian Independence Day, people will drink, the soup joumon, And but it's because it's something that was ordered by the Saline for that was French and I've never, I grew up in Haiti. I had historians as my teachers, people who were lawyers and always wrote plays about Haitian history. And as a kid, you have to go and, adults and everybody sit there. I had never heard this before, not until 6 years ago. And I told my sister, so I said, have you heard that stuff? Because I grew up before it in my own household and all those stories. And I've never heard this. And now I've heard, And she said, nonsense. And she even worked with the library in Virginia. And to say, don't stop that stuff, because it's not true. And she came up, she and this other Haitian woman came up with a number of sources that debunk this whole myth of deciding how the others died and all of this. It was not true. As a matter of fact, we're stable in number of enslaved Africans that thought managed to have lots of land or the plots, and it's part of the Haitian culinary tradition. We can talk some more about that.
But I digress.
Duvalier. So this is baby dog, right? His name is Jean-Claude Duvalier. His father, François Duvalier, came to power. He was a medical doctor. He came to power in 1957. He's the last of a long list of dictators that the US had put in power. So since then, there have been others. But 1957, the father, who's known as Papa Doc, and references for you, there is a book called Papa Doc and the Tontomacous. I recommend it. It's something else. But if you want to watch a movie, there is a fictionalized movie. It's kind of old. It's dated. It's called The Comedians, from a novel by Graham Greene. And that movie, The Comedians, is actually about the fictionalized version of true events that happened under Papa Doc's regime. Very brutal. I grew up under that regime. So he died. Papa Doc died. Between him and his son, they must have killed an estimated 40 to 50,000 Haitians who were killed during the regime. But he was made president by the US and the Haitian military. because he had an anti-communist line, which from the very beginning he was handpicked and trained by the US. And so at that time, there was a rise in people, it was communist. They called everything a communist. Anything that was opposed to Chiquita Banana or any US corporation, mining corporations that were extracting things from Haiti, there was a strong movement in Haiti among the labor unions. Peasants were being dispossessed of their land so that big US corporations, just like throughout Latin America, could take over their land. So there was a massive movement of those peasants against it. And so they got Duvalier in power so that Duvalier could crack down. And crack down, it disappeared many union leaders, many activists, democracy supporters, and all they had to do was call them communists. And the money flowed from the US. Money, political support. They knew, the US knew that, but they did. And so his son, who was 19 years old, came to power in 1971 after Kabak died. They changed the constitution. Duvalier would just change the constitution that way, made his son president for life. And and the reign of terror continued until 1986, when the people of Haiti rose up, were successfully able to write up all of the names. And then they got rid of David Duvalier. And this man, who was a priest, Father Jean-Bertrand Aristide, was one of the mobilizers of the anti-Duvalier movement. The people elected him president, and I'm moving a little fast, in 1990. It was a tough struggle to move from 1986, the overthrow of Duvalier, the military, Haitian military took over. Everyone, I would say almost everyone in the senior leadership of the Haitian military was said to be either CIA operative or actively working with the CIA against the people's movement. And so after much struggle, there was finally election, the first ever democratic election in Haiti. And this man won overwhelmingly. In the field of 11 candidates, he received 67% of the vote. Elections before in Haiti were done, they were show elections. I myself, I was 8 years old, and I voted 10 times for Duvalier to be president for life. And the UN called it, oh, these are credible elections. That was the only time I ever voted in my life. I was a kid, they shut down the schools, they made everybody go out to vote. And here I was with my friends singing the song Duvalier, Duvalier forever. And then, hey, free school, no school, happiness, whatever. So I was 8 when I voted. I had stacks of ballots. And I must have gone to different polling places and don't care for Duvalier. It was a mess, And they had the nerve to declare 98 point something percent voted for Duvalier. Counting mine. 100 votes for me. So Aristide took over. Did you want to go into that?
So when he took over, the US, of course, was outraged because he promised a completely different kind of administration. And 7 months later, he was overthrown by a bloody coup. And with officers trained and funded by the US, nearly 5,000 Lavalas, his movement was called Lavalas Blood. And nearly 5,000 people were murdered and raped. There were like 10,000 rapes. And rape has been like a really well-used method in terms of the population and terrifying the population. It's continued from then until now. 300,000 patients were driven into hiding, and then tens of thousands left the country. And this was like during, we can see that Guantanamo was first used actually for Haitian refugees. And under pressure and under the Clinton administration, like Aristide was restored in 1994, but he wasn't, there was a 5-year term and he wasn't allowed to like his 5 years that he should have had. He was only allowed to like play out a little bit of time. That was part of the thing that, people say, oh, he gave in, or then, the Clinton did it out of the goodness of his heart, et cetera, et cetera. But really, it was the movement of the people that forced the Clinton administration to restore Aristide to power. So that's what happened. And upon his return, he disbanded the Haitian army that had actually, in the years previously, done all these disappearances, torture, etc. And when I went to Haiti in 2010, we took testimony from all these women about what happened. And people's arms were cut off, people were tortured for days, they were continuously raped, and this was all done under the aegis of the state army. So it was absolutely necessary to disband this. And also because otherwise you couldn't restore confidence in the population because of what they did. And so his last official act before he had to end his administration was to restore diplomatic relations with Cuba, and then which had been broken 30 years before. And you can imagine what the Clinton administration and what the U.S. State Department thought of this news. It's just one more, to nail in the coffin in terms of what those going to add.
Yeah, and during that time, the little bit of time that he had in power, he dealt a big blow to the corruption that was taking place. There were checks that they call zombie checks. And what the zombie checks were, they were just checks made out to people who never showed up for work. And then, but they were collected by people in the government and put in their pocket. You see, so they pocket. So President Aristide came in and he decided, okay, let's do an accounting of who actually showed up for work. And they found out a whole lot of these people were not working, they didn't exist. So people call them zombie checks, and so they eliminated all of that. So that was a huge savings from the. So, and also very big for us was the fact that the Creole language, which is spoken by all Haitians, 100% of the Haitians spoke Creole, speak Creole. Only 10% in the of the privilege speak and understand French, but they do understand. So President Aristide made Creole. It was made that way in the Constitution, but President Aristide took it a step further. He actually went to the UN and spoke in Creole, took the oath of office in Creole. And Haitians were, wow, because we never thought we would see that in our lives. And so he valorized Haitian culture. And he started doing things in education, promoting education, women rights, big promoter of them. And so when he disbanded the military, our equivalent of the Pentagon, imagine the US Pentagon, right? He decommissioned it and turned it over to the women's movement, creating the Ministry for Women's Affairs. Those were all the things that made him so unpopular for the US and for the ruling people in Haiti. Also, he increased the minimum wage, which was just terrible, and he increased it. And there was massive opposition, funded by the US and
So then in 2000, he got elected again, with this time 91% of the vote. And this was probably the most progressive government that Haiti had ever had. In fact, I would say it was one of the most progressive governments ever.
Yeah.
Actually. And he established, in the little time that he had, more schools were built in Haiti than in their entire history. He had housing, he did literacy campaigns, he introduced hospitals and clinics in a situation where there was nothing. He had cooperatives and so on and so forth. So he built this really progressive country. And at the same time, the US did everything it could to stranglehold him. For instance, they took out loans from the Latin American bank, OAS Bank?
Yeah, it's the Inter-American Bank for Europe.
Inter-American Bank. They held up the loan, but they made him pay the interest on the loan, even though he didn't get the money from the loan. I mean, that's like the extent of it. I mean, these people really, really. So then all of this is taking place, right? And then in 2003, as Pierre mentioned, he had the temerity to actually demand from France that they begin to pay reparations and restitution, and not a mere 8 months later, he was overthrown again. Next slide. And this is a picture of the U.S. military against the Haitians. And he was overthrown again, and a U.S. UN occupation came in.
Let me say something about this photo. See that hand there? That was a symbol back then.
Yeah, 5.
People were saying 5 years. So that could get you killed just for waiting your 5. That meant that Aristide took it was back to finish his 5-year term.
And during that time, they also began to build the University of the Arts Foundation. And what was one of the first things that the U.S. did? The Marines came in and they deliberately smashed the school and occupied what had been clinics. Many Cuban doctors were completely destroyed. And that was just symbolic of what happened. And so when we look at the situation in Haiti today, it has its genesis. Of course, it has its genesis in the long history of colonialism. But specifically, it has its genesis in the 2004 coup. And so Haiti hasn't recovered since. So we're going to get to the current situation.
Could you talk the reason why the coup? America was a coup in civil war. 1990.
The reason behind the coup,
Yes.
we said that he was undemocratic. They had put in, I mean, it's really interesting in terms of how you manage counterinsurgents, right? Because especially the 2004 coup, what happened? They funded all these like big groups, nonprofit. There were more nonprofits in Haiti than any other. There were like 1,000 nonprofits in Haiti. And they funded all these like supposed opposition groups, right? Who staged demonstrations. And they said that he was corrupt. They said he was a drug runner. They said he was killing people and opposition, that he wouldn't allow any opposition. And you know what? Organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch is the CIA fund, but even Amnesty took it up, and all these like supposed human rights organizations in the US went along with all this garbage. And since then, it's been completely proven that those little demonstrations and those organizations were funded from the US, and that they were completely, so they did just like they do in many countries. They say a progressive leader, oh, they're corrupt. Really, they're the ones who are the drug runners. But they just reverse the situation, and then they put it out there, and it's an interesting thing, I think, that we have to like really deal with right now is that the mainstream press, but not just the mainstream, also the liberal press and the left press, they get these ideas and then they trickle down and then people regard them as facts. And it's a way of like rewriting history, denialism of what's really going on, but it becomes canon of about what's going on. So yeah,
It sounds very similar to what they're saying about Venezuela right now.
exactly about Venezuela. You know, there's a progressive. And I'm sure there is some corruption in Venezuela. Of course, there is some Democrat, but you know,
Yeah,
let's face it.
on that point, I remember President Aristide was very strong on the anti-corruption campaign, and he had some ministers and people that he caught being corrupt. Some officials who were doing their duties, they were checking, and they arrested them, right, for for corruption. Then right away, the U.S., France, Canada, they picked up the chair. Oh, these people are opposed to the government. That's why they are arrested. So there is a whole lot of human rights campaign saying that President Aristide is arrested. This guy's a thief. He arrested a thief, But then no, it's political persecution. So it was all that nonsense out there. A number of university students, they were paid. Some of the leaders, not everybody, were paid $50 in a bag of rice to go out and organize demonstrations in the streets. And so that was taking place as well. So many of them have since recently come out and said and given the truth on radio and saying how they regret what they have done because now look at the state of the country. You see, and they didn't get anything for it except the $50 to get that for that day in a bag of rice. So it's interesting to listen to Haitian media. So many of them now are asking forgiveness and all that, but many have never forgiven them, for what they've done because they are responsible for this current church.
Yeah.
Sorry. Whether we can take Haiti at this time and put it in the same basket as Cuba and Venezuela, which I thought stood very steadfastly to oppose the U.S. imperialism, but the U.S. and the United Nations peacekeeping, of course, was used to overthrow the newly elected government of Haiti, and it didn't do that in the case of when they tried, but it didn't do it in the case of Venezuela and Cuba because these countries still had their military intact, and Aristide had, on necessity, disbanded the Haitian military, and therefore it was defenseless to resist the U.S.
I've heard this presented before, but had President Aristide not disbanded the military, it wasn't his own decision. I was in Haiti, and I remember when he came back the first time. The people of Haiti, myself included, so hated the military. See, I grew up under the Haitian people, and I saw how brutal they were, how they had participated. We had family, friends who were massacred, including an 18-month-old baby, and then the great grandmother was 87. They were killed by the Haitian people and the Totomanis. Every government in Haiti had to face the military coup at some point if it didn't. The military was completely corrupt in government traffic. Had President Aristide not disbanded the military, he wouldn't have been elected. There wouldn't have been any democratic election without for his successor to take over. And his election in 2000 would have taken place. But this is a military, say in the US, the military, you don't see them in the streets mowing down people who are dying of the People lined up to vote in November 1987 on election. General non-free send the troops and they mowed down the peace. So the military was disbanded, but there was the police force that was being built up. And the police force was a community police force. In other words, the people demanding that, and they were taken from the ranks of the population. So it was a situation where the police and the people were guaranteeing the safety and security. So when President Aristide was there, the safety and security of the population was guaranteed by that police force. I'm sure eventually down the road there would be the military, but it would have to be some coming from the people. The military we had before was all US made, and it took its orders direct from Washington, not from anybody else. So I don't know if that. So it would have been completely useless.
Two other things I years, and that is like he opened up the presidential palace to the population. People could go even swimming in his swimming pool. And that just showed his relationship to the people and how much he trusted the people. They could never be that, and the other thing that which I think is really interesting and has always stuck with me, is that he created public parks, and public spaces. And so what's so important about that, right? Because, of course, we have parks, right, big deal. But in Haiti, where people don't have any privacy, where people don't have the ability to get together, everybody's so packed in together. So many people live under very difficult conditions. To have a public space that had lights at night, people could go to study, people could meet their, girlfriend or boyfriend outside of like the eyes of their parents, and they could have a meeting with their friends, etc. So this became another, like, I think, really symbolic, real tenet of the Aristide administration, because it showed how much he was thinking. They were thinking about the well-being of their.
And money was invested in building low-cost affordable housing. And with the UN, there has been $13 billion since the UN. It's a shame, it's a scandal to see people call them homes, just for walls. Right? With all that money, most of it went into the Clinton Bush Foundation, stolen by Haiti and Jovenel Moïse and all the Haitian presidents.
Next slide.
But in Haiti, at the time when Aristide was faced with blocking of the loans that Merck talked about earlier, and also economic sabotage by the US, the money that was collected from the population was invested in the population. And that includes the 40% that was saved from the disbanding of the nation military. Mm-hmm. That money was invested in building hospitals, building affordable housing, where people could go. And I visited one of these apartments. It's like any apartment in the US, indoor plumbing. Indoor plumbing in Haiti. I didn't have that when I was born. Schools were built not in the cities, which traditionally that's where they are built. They were built in the countryside, because that's where the majority of the people live. And many times children had to come to the cities in order to go to school away from their families. He said, no, we are building schools, primary, secondary, including high schools, right there for the people in the countries. So Haiti was changing so much that you have Haitian people who had fled Haiti before, who actually live in countries like the US, for instance, coming back to invest in Haiti, to invest their time, their money, to help Haiti move. And then we have the coup, 2004, and everybody's. Now you are saying this tragedy of both people, they are not calling them that, but this tragedy of Haitian refugees being whipped on the border of Mexico and the US, being treated like worse than dogs and cattle in the Dominican Republic, so I'm getting ahead of myself.
So in 2011, just to show you his popularity, still shows the incredible joy that people had at his he came back and knew us, oh no, he's gonna run for president again. But actually what they decided, both in the was to rebuild the university, to invest in the future of the generation. Leader. Okay, so next slide. So where are we today? So since 2004, there were a series of corrupt, basically dictators, Then the last one was Jovenel Moise, who was assassinated by his own people, basically, because he was so corrupt, and it was just like both internal power. And since that time, there are no elected officials in Haiti, none. He disbanded the parliament, he disbanded the whole thing. And since that time, there has been no election, there's no elected, there's nothing. And what's happened is through, we believe, the US, Britain, France, and Canada, who were the people that engineered these two coups, have bankrolled this series of what people are calling gangs, but in reality, you could look at them as paramilitary death squads that, don't only exist in Haiti, but exist in other places. And it's very interesting how this using of gangs is proliferating. It's proliferating throughout the Caribbean. We saw that Israel is employed in gangs in Gaza and the West Bank. We saw that Israel funded so-called gangs in Iran. And so this is a strategy basically to destroy all this. Haiti has the highest homicide rate in the world, and the Caribbean has the highest 7 out of 10 in the whole world. And all these guns and weapons are flooding into Haiti. It's estimated that there's like at least 500,000 small weapons in Haiti. Haiti doesn't produce any weapons. And neither do these other countries. They're not gun producing. They're all, the vast majority, and this has been documented by the UN, the vast majority are coming from the US, Florida, mostly, Georgia, and some other countries. And the rest of them are coming through the Dominican Republic and some parts of the Caribbean. And these guns and these weapons and these gangs are terrorizing the country and making it, the tradition people call it hell on earth. And you can see, like, this is actually a photo how disastrous. Like, look, there's nobody there. The whole parts of Haiti look like us. They haven't been bombed; they've been burned. And I'm going to show you this video. It's sort of disturbing, but I think it'll show you like the use of killing and weapons and rape. Young babies are being raped, 94-year-old women are being, boys are being raped, and they're using this to terrorize the population. But one of the things that I think is really important to remember is it doesn't just terrorize the population. And of course, the main victims are women and girls. But what do you do to a society where you have boys, young kids who have been put into these gangs, recruited into gangs because they have no food, they have no education, and that's true throughout the world. Who's in these gangs? Who's in these armies? What do you do in a population where you're committing those? Like, how do you recover the trauma that has going to result in the society? It's going to take a whole generation or maybe 2 generations to even recover from that. So you destroy the society, and then you can destroy it in many. And this is part, I think, of the strategy about it. They want the gold, they want the minerals, they just want people to leave and die or whatever, you know? So I'm going to show you this video.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I'm gonna play it.
You were shot by the gangs themselves, celebrating. And it was what this happened in the Altipo neighborhood. This is Altipo. This is Slugs. This
yeah. So this little scene is being duplicated throughout. And it's it's very dangerous. The security situation is extremely dangerous and doesn't seem like next slide.
Sorry.
Okay, so 6 years ago, I went to Haiti to investigate this massacre, which interestingly enough, and Bondi just referenced it. And there's the leader of this gangs called, and all the gangs like got together. So
it's living together.
Yeah.
They got psychological.
yeah,
Mm.
and his name is Barbecue, Jimmy Jersey A. And he came into this community, which is, I want you to.
Oh, we're good.
He came into this community, which was a lava lost stronghold, and also right near the port. And significantly, this port was also where enslaved Africans were brought in. It's also one of the places that guns are being brought in. It's one of the places where it's so corrupt, but there's a community nearby. There had been all this struggle there, and they came in and they pretended that they were the police. They brought in several police cars, and then they massacred the population, burned all the buildings. There was this, and I decided not to show it, but you can go on the Haiti website and read this and see the photos. There was a skeleton of a woman with the knife. There's bullet holes everywhere. And this was in some ways, this was 6 years ago. So since 6 years, this has been going on. And basically, what's significant, why are they there? Right? Why are they in these particular places? Because they're near the port and they're near downtown and they're lava lost supporters. And the combination of all that makes them a perfect target for these gangs. And then they went from the downtown and spread out throughout Port-au-Prince, and now they're in other areas that, like I mentioned, which are like a food producer situation. So there are now more than 1 million people who are internally displaced. It's estimated that half the population, more than 5 million people out of 12 million, are facing food insecurity. right? And all of us know from what's happening in the genocide in Palestine what food insecurity really means. And that really is the situation. I don't know if you want.
Yeah, some
And I can
about
give some other examples.
some about Jimmy Sherry's, the barbecue is that
Next one.
the name barbecue actually means he got the name because one of the special burned for the land. And that's why he got the name barbecue. He's a former police officer trained by the UN. He's trained by the US. After the coup of 2004, he joined, trained by the UN. The gangs in Haiti was started by police officers. And so that was his specialty. When he killed somebody, he would burn your body, and sometimes he burns your back. That's how that the name barbecue. It's a shame that people like what's the guy's name? Kim Ives, who is Haiti Liberté Chris Hedges, and then Cohen have been trying to present these people as revolutionaries. Nothing revolutionary about them. They were actually they are the guns being used by the dictators, Martelly, Jovenel Moïse, and many of them they brag about, yeah, this gun was given to me by Martelly or by Jovenel Moïse and whatnot. So many Haitians believe, and I'm among them, we believe that when the Tonto and the military was disbanded, and the Tonto the people was up against them, the system needs to have some enforcers, people who kill for them outright. And so what they started relying on is paid assassins like these guys. And so it's interesting to see how many police officers are the people who created those groups. For example, there was a warrant for his arrest, supposedly, right after the last massacre. But barbecue was out there with a police escort giving interviews.
Meeting with the ambassador.
Meeting with the US ambassador or an official from the embassy. And when the ambassador was confronted with that about 4 or 5 months ago, and he said he didn't deny it. He said, well, we have to speak to them because, there were some shots fired near the embassy. We wanted to know if it was intentional. Now, can you think of gang members, think of, right? Embassy officials are meeting with them to find out if it was intentional. You don't find, and these are people who feel warrant for their arrest. So,
these are just two examples. This one and this young one.
yeah.
21 years old. She watched, they threw her baby into a fire. And then in the end, she died. She sort of died.
They made her watch. They wanted her to throw the baby. And she said no. So then they snatched the baby from her and threw the baby into the fire. They made her watch. But they didn't her. And so for the next 2 weeks, she went throughout Haiti, throughout the area of Pétionville, and completely disoriented, lost, and then couldn't eat anything, couldn't drink. And then she died of a broken heart, and that was on February 14th, Valentine's. That's when she died.
Next slide. And then this is another example. These two nuns, they're a convent and their church, and then these two with a couple of other people hid, and then they went in and they massacred. Of course, they're doing this all the time. The reason that we highlight them is because this is so symbolic of how people are being treated. And right after that, there was huge massacre. They were killed. And we say, when we're talking about revolutionaries, even in gangs, even if they hate the current government, do not murder them. And in a religious country, they do not murder.
And they were conducting a seminar on education, preparing the teachers and people engaged in community education. And they created the seminar, and then the nuns, others, did somewhere, took them out and
So, the people, yes. So throughout this period, there have been massive demonstrations, both against the UN. And just one thing I'd like to say about the UN. Whenever there's like conflict, people have said this to us, like, why don't you bring in the UN? And it's like, I always say, armed peacekeepers is an oxymoron. And just because a soldier puts on a blue helmet does not transform this person into some peace-loving person. And actually, the UN was a brutal enforcement. They're racist and very progressive governments like Lula, who's doing a great job right now. But Lula was one of the first to send troops into Haiti. And and Jordanians and Nepal, who as people probably know, brought cholera and 10,000 deaths into Haiti. And the UN has refused to take any responsibility. There are lawsuits and they go, yeah, we know it came from us, but we're not going to do anything about it. The UN perpetrated massacres. The UN also, UN soldiers did these like transactional agreements with young girls to have sex, and then they would give them some food. And now there's a lot of children that are these, they're not really fathers, but these biological fathers were UN troops. And the UN also acknowledges that that's true, but won't take any responsibility. So when we think about the UN, we have to think about it very differently than often we do. It's not that the UN, like UNRWA or other things, they do good things, but UN peacekeepers are not peacekeepers.
The short version is atrocious. And Lula for Haitians. Reforming people, we personally look at it and walk with. And I didn't shed a tear that it was in prison, even though I knew it was the right thing to do. Because his troops were responsible for the massacre, for several massacres, particularly in Cité Soleil. Cité Soleil is another neighborhood of very poor people, but very politicized folks who were standing strong in opposition to the two coups because they said, look, we voted for this man, and we want our vote to be respected. We want the rule of law, and you guys are not. And so they went in with helicopter gunships. We have a video called What's Going Hey, it's a 16-minute video which shows, it's very graphic, which shows the massacring of people. And I was audio witness to that because at the time of the massacre, at least for two of the massacres, so that this young journalist living there called, he called me on the phone to say, Pierre, what can we do? They are massacring us. What can we do? And I was listening to the gunfire and I said, man, are you protected? He said, yeah, I'm filming. I said, never mind the filming, protect yourself, And he was describing to the people who were here what he was saying, but he said, yeah, I'm taking care of him, just, I buy the underworld when I can, and we have all this footage. So, this is, and Lula knew all about it because people brought him the information. He went, but did anything. Why the US had promised a receipt in the Security Council.
So now what's happening in terms of government?
What year?
This is 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. It went on.
Yeah.
And there is a video also where the people were demonstrating in a peaceful demonstration. This UN consul officer was blocking the demonstration and then shooting at the crowd. We have this video also.
We saw UN tanks throughout, right? going throughout Port-au-Prince. That was even 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
When you make a show, when you're with the weekly show.
That was this year.
This video
Yeah.
here of the killing.
Yeah.
Well, this is just 2 months ago.
And what was the last one?
Jovenel Moïse, that was in 2021.
Yeah,
Damn.
2021.
yeah. So now,
And you went in 2019.
Yeah, I followed up
yeah,
on Merck's work.
Yeah.
We followed up with delegation, following up on that with Dan Blogger, Professor Maxim Waters, Walter Riley, who's an attorney in Oakland, Martin Prescott, who had also done with Merck and did filming. Who else was there? There was somebody else, Brian Montanan of, so we went and met with 55 of the survivors. We described to us, and this included 5 of the young women who were gang raped by the massacre of last week. Yes.
and if you go on our website, which is www.haitysolidarity.net, you can read that report and see the photos. I just didn't have like one right photos, so in 2017 was Sally complete.
Yes, 2018.
In 2018, Marvelos issued something called Sally Complete. And basically they said, look, the situation is an absolute mess, and it's sort of like the health of the society. And what we propose is that we bring in a coalition, not exactly government, but government, made up of all the like different aspects of the population, like the churches, the nonprofits, the business, all the different women, several different sectors. And for 2 years, we will work together to build a new kind of government, democratic, and then we can have a real election. Because we can't have an election under these circumstances, actually, on 10 of them. And then the US, Canada, France, and Britain, UK, which is known as the core group, came in and said, good idea, but we will put in our people. Businessmen, oligarchs, corrupt politicians, etc., etc. And yeah, you can have a couple of seats, just so it looks, okay. And they have done that, and basically it's called a traditional council. Its time is up in January, February, and basically it's the same old same. And basically the U.S. wants to use this and the rest of them to bring in just another corrupt government. And so and at the same time, so that's happening, right? And there's complete chaos at the same time. So you have a situation where people, will say, well, we need military intervention, or we need some kind of stability. So, okay, we'll accept this. And the other thing that's happened is, in addition to all the private funds, people have probably heard that Blackwater has sent. They did send some troops from Kenya, but all they've been doing, like the people in Haiti call them tourists. They're eating our food and protecting the embassy. They've been completely and utterly ineffective. Plus, they're the very same people who are murdering their own people in Kenya. So that's who that is. We're getting to the end. Next. So all this has produced a massive refugee situation in the US. This was a couple of years ago, but it's emblematic. This is under the Biden administration. Hundreds of thousands of people. And we know that what the Haitians, they did that whole thing about Haitians eating dogs and cats, which is this like trope that has been used against Chinese, against Black people, etc. in the US for many. This is actually what they got it. So there are 300,000 Haitians here under. There are 300,000 people here under something called TPS, temporary protective status. And then there are 200,000 Haitians here under something called the parole program. Now, the Trump administration has canceled TPS, which also involves Venezuelans, Guatemalans, Nepalese, and Salvadorans. And so over 1 million people are faced with deportation, imminent deportation. And this is this, we say Pam Bondi got on and said, well, the situation in Haiti is so much better now. Meantime, you can't even fly it to Port-au-Prince. You can't do anything. And there's like a massacre happened like the next day. So it's just this unbelievable situation. And whenever there were 2 court hearings 2 weeks ago, actually in San Francisco at the Ninth Circuit, where they ruled for extending TPS, and then the Superior Court just went against it, said no. And so it will go to Supreme Court, and we know the Supreme Court will then say, okay, you have. And there are people here who have been here for 30 years. And all these people, the thing that's so ironic, that these people, even though I don't accept legal or illegal, all of these people are, quote, legal. They've all done the right thing, according to, and this is what they want to do.
Some I want to say, while the US was saying Haiti is safe, at the same time, the US State Department, what they should be trying is all over kids. Well, Haiti is safe, we can send people back.
Yeah, and
Yet there's a travel advisory for US citizens, including those in Haiti, to that Haiti is safe, leave Haiti right away, but it's okay to go to Haiti.
yeah, and then they're denouncing the Venezuelan government. And then saying it's okay to send back Venezuelans, and yeah, the whole situation is. So we have 2 campaigns. One of them is it's an international campaign for restitution from France. Oh, next slide. And you can see this was on his birthday, and it's like, happy birthday, President Aristide, restore reparations and restitution. Next slide. And this is the international campaign. Can you see? This is about the Eiffel Tower. Like, you feel really bad. I was. So this is one, and we're saying go to our website, and we ask you to write to the French consulate or French embassy demanding that France pay its debt to Haiti. And just recently, and I also advise you to look at this article called "The Ransom" from the New York Times, which is a really good expose of what happened. Yeah, and in that article, the French admit, oh yeah, that might have had something to do with the coup. Yeah.
French ambassador was in Haiti at the time. Maybe.
Our other main, of course, is around the deportations and in addition to stop the deportations and to restore to the West. And our third is to stop the export of guns and weapons, and of course, restore democracy. And then, next slide. And it's not all so, it's not like everything is completely destroyed. When President Aristide went back to Haiti, they restored the Aristide Foundation and the Aristide University. And And this is like they graduated, they have a nursing school, agricultural school, medical school, law school, agronomist school, physical therapy school, and they graduated thousands of graduates. Unlike other universities, I went to the one of the graduations, and you know how like in American graduations, everybody's like, raucous and everything. This was the most serious and joyful graduation. And you could tell that the people in this class were from the grassroots. It was very, very obvious. And the other thing about it is 50% men, 50% women. And that, of course, is very obvious. Like in Gaza, the gangs have targeted universities, hospitals, clinics, etc. And the hospital, the Aristide Foundation, is one of the only ones left standing. And that's why it's so important. And we feel like it's called UNIFA. And that's our other campaign through the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, which is called HERP. And we also advise them to go to our site for that. And this is just an example of like, in the midst of all of this, people are still like struggling to get to school. They have to go through all these areas that are extremely dangerous. And of course, we're very worried about the people of Rabalas, about the airspace. So this is just a great picture of graduates. And next. And this is the Aristide University, and just a picture of graduating class. And the reason that this is important is because Lagalas and the Aristide Foundation and progressive people and the grassroots say the only thing we can do is invest in the next generation. The only thing we can do is to make people whole. We have to heal the trauma, and we have to educate our young people so that they are able to heal other people as well. So it's very important that's why we're going to put our imagery to this now. And I think it's important, it's significant that the gangs have targeted universities and colleges and hospitals and churches. Just like the playbook is just the same in all these countries. And for us, the fact that the progressive left, like one of the things is Haiti doesn't have a communist party. That's not the history of Haiti. I mean, there were communist parties, but the history of the movement in Haiti is a grassroots-led movement, and it has its own culture and its own context. But somehow, because of that, the so-called left in this country pays very little attention to this Black-led, Black country, right, as we saw on the map, very close to us. And we feel it's the obligation. If you're like, say, Black Lives Matter, if you say we're anti-racist, anti-white supremacists, the history of Haiti and U.S. intervention is a history of white supremacy and colonialism. And we feel like, and we know that progressive people have an obligation to find out about Haiti. And I hope that, we can get more people here next time, and that you will proliferate and disseminate our information, and that you will support the people of Haiti. And I'm going to say again, www.haitysolidarity.net and Haiti Emergency Relief.
And we got these sliders.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think we did.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any words? That's who? The French.
The French, it's interesting. There are many French left Congress members of parliament, very vocal. They passed a resolution. It's non-binding, but it's good. It's the first time we've seen that in the French parliament saying that France wants to pay Haiti back. So they are at the stage of raising consciousness. Of course, the Haitian community in France is also raising sand and people are in the streets, it's raising consciousness. So there is, and President Macron has said, well, France owes Haiti a debt. And he said, but we have to study it. He put together a commission to study it. And we have, going back to the times of the slave uprising, the uprising of the enslaved people, of the enslaved Africans, the French loved the idea of a commission. So the commission was really to put you to sleep. They'll take care of this. And fortunately, our foremothers and forefathers said, we don't want to hear it. We want what's ours now, which is get out of it.
Yeah.
The French said, we owe Haiti a moral debt, not a monetary. It's because they owe a monetary debt to Nigeria, Mali, to all the so if they actually pay back Haiti, they'll then the flood, they're afraid the flood will put all shit.
And what you said brings to mind, September 2003, when President Harris was under the UN, 18 September, and he made a powerful speech. He presented to the world his team that was functioning to pay him. And it wasn't just rhetoric, because he had assembled a team of international legal experts. And so that was the first thing, was to demand the money. The next step was going to be to go to the courts and present the case officially. So that's when the coup took place. There was a rush for the coup to that extent. But after he finished speaking at the UN, there were delegates from all over Africa lined up in Latin America to shake his hand. They meant like that also.
Yeah, thank you.